So it is National Eating Disorders Awareness Week, and a lot of people are very surprised to know that eating disorders are actually the deadliest mental health condition that there is. Some of you know that, and some of you don't know that. So yeah, eating disorders are the deadliest mental health condition. More people die from eating disorders than any other mental health condition. So interesting. And there are 30% of people suffer with eating disorders that are reported. The problem with eating disorders are that they're often underreported. People don't report them because of shame and stigma. So that's what's really tricky. I think this is a really important topic, and I wanted to talk about this because so many people suffer from them. And it's just a really tough topic for people to talk about, to get treatment for. And they're often, it's often tough for people to overcome because they won't seek treatment. So eating disorders are not the same for everyone. And something that a lot of people don't know is that, well, unless you read my book, if you read my book, then you do know. I actually suffered with an eating disorder, and it was quite the struggle. But it's not the same for everyone. So I hear other people talk about how they struggled with an eating disorder, and it was different for me. So I think it's really important. I think that's an important point to know, is that when you are working with someone, or you know someone, or you have a child or someone like that has an eating disorder, it's not one size fits all. We often say depression isn't the same for everybody. ADD isn't, or ADHD isn't the same for everybody. Well, eating disorders aren't really the same for everybody. For me personally, it really wasn't as much about my physical appearance or being overweight. It was an anxiety. It was a way to manage anxiety. So for a lot of people, it's either anxiety related, it is depression related. There's a lot of issues with it's like the eating disorder is actually the symptom of a deeper thing going on with them. And then for a lot of people, it's body dysmorphia, right? So it just depends. Everyone's different. And that's something that's really important to know, because you have to really get to the bottom of it. And I just remember, so it's in my book. I actually write a lot about this in my book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. I grew up in chaos and trauma and drama, and just, it was a really bad time in my life. It sort of all came to a head when I was a teenager, and I was just kind of done. And when you feel like there's no way out, like something's got to happen. And I was a good girl. Good girls don't do drugs, right? So I didn't do drugs. And all of a sudden one day, it's just like, I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody. I felt like there was nowhere to turn. And there was just like this pressure building. And I found myself over a toilet bowl. Weird, gross, whatever you want to call it. But it was like this pressure valve was like released. And it was odd. And I didn't want to tell anyone, obviously. And then my mom found out and freaked out, which is why I didn't want to tell anyone. She's like screaming and crying and all kinds of like drama around that, which is so typical in my family. So that was why I didn't want to tell anyone. But I remember her taking me to UCLA Eating Disorders Clinic to get help. And one of the things that motivated me, and this could be a good thing for some people and not a good thing for other people, but one of the things that motivated me was, while we were there, a young girl who was my age ended up coding. If those of you who don't know what coding means, she went into cardiac arrest. She had an eating disorder. I was there actually doing the intake form and the evaluation, and she went into cardiac arrest. And I was like, I remember someone walking by and going, "We lost her." And I'm like, "What do you mean you lost her? Where did she go?" And then when I started to realize what they were saying, she went into cardiac arrest. I'm like, what? She did what? From what? Like, how does an eating disorder do that? I had no idea that was even possible. So sometimes knowing the consequences without shaming a person can make a difference. So for me, that made a big difference, because I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know that it would damage your teeth, or that it would, cause cardiac arrest, or that all of these things would I just didn't know those things. Finding those things out motivated me in a huge way to find a different outlet for my anxiety. Now, for some people, it's not quite so simple. And I'm not saying it was simple. I'm just saying I found a different outlet for my anxiety. So I transferred my release valve to exercise, and I started exercising a lot. Now you have to be careful, because you can also exercise too much and start using that as a form of purging. So there's a process, and you got to get professional help. But not everyone is able to do that. And I think that it's really important to understand. So that's why professional help is so important. But knowledge is power, right? So understanding the consequences of your actions can sometimes be very helpful. And so this was something that for me, for many years, I had no more struggles with the actual physical part of the eating disorder as long as I was able to manage my anxiety. Now fast forward and I get cancer. And I was not able to use my coping mechanism anymore. And this is when I actually realized that I had never done the real deep work, because as soon as that coping mechanism was taken away from me, the eating disorder emerged again. And so that's when I started to realize, oh, I never actually did the deep work on this. I just sort of put a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. And so it's very, very important to understand and do that deeper work. So that's my personal story. And this is why this is really important to me and why I wanted to address it during this week. And it's also one of the myths is that it's a disorder of girls and women. It's not. So I was a gym rat. I became a gym rat as a way to, control my anxiety. So I'm hanging out in the gym with a lot of people who now are very focused on their bodies, and a lot of bodybuilders and a lot of men who are bodybuilders. And guess what? Those are the men who tend to have eating disorders. Men who are very focused on their physiques, who are competitive. And so I ended up knowing a few men who had eating disorders. So it's very important to understand that. But you think they're going to report that? They're never going to report that. It's very rare that they'll even tell anybody. So it starts very, very, very young. As young as 9, you'll find it reported. I know even in my own, house, when my daughter was 12 is when I started to notice her friends. There was a trend in young girls in middle school buying digestive or health teas. They're actually labeled as digestive teas or health teas. And they're like health remedies. And I was actually furious when I discovered that that's not what they were. They're actually laxative teas. So that infuriated me, because as someone who struggled, you don't need any help struggling in this realm by thinking you're doing something good for your body when it's actually not good for your body. So as a parent, I would urge you to be very aware of some of the supplements your kids bring home, or the teas they're seeing, some of the things they're seeing on social media that are being advertised as good for them that are not good for them at all. Super important to know. And according to the National Eating Disorder Awareness site, their calls went up 107%. 107% just since the pandemic. So what that tells me is that a lot of people are like me, that it was anxiety and depression related. So because people are not now, they don't have their normal coping mechanisms. And so eating disorders skyrocketed during that time. So very important to know. So here's an interesting little fact, a little tidbit. Apps. These beauty apps are not helping. So apps that can make your waistline smaller, your butt bigger, your whatever. Okay, all these apps that can change your body shape. The Journal of American Medical Association actually came up with a new diagnosis of Snapchat dysmorphia. Snapchat dysmorphia. Super interesting. Driving visits to plastic surgeons by young people by 30%. Driving visits to plastic surgeons by 30%. Now, these are not people plastic surgeons want, because no matter what you do, they can't make you happy, right? Because you have this very unrealistic view. If you're altering your face, making your eyes bigger, your butt bigger, you know what I mean? Like your weight, whatever. They're not going to be able to match that. And so this is a major problem, that these apps are turning kids into something that they're not. And so you want to be aware of this. So what can you do? You need to get professional help. You need to understand what's driving it. So it's not one thing for everyone. And I think that's in, days past, I think, they always blamed it on your mom, and, or they always thought it was, I'm sort of obviously minimizing what it really was, but I'm overgeneralizing. It's not always your mom's fault. It's not always body dysmorphia. It can be many different things. That's all I'm trying to say. Important to know your brain type. Are you a little OCD? Like my daughter has anxiety that's out of control. She's a little bit OCD. I have sleepy frontal lobes. So what drives me is going to be different than what drives someone like her. What helps someone like me is going to be different than what helps someone with a busy brain. Really important to know. Don't shame yourself. And if you're helping someone else or you're helping your child with something like this, please don't shame them. It just makes it 10 times worse. They will not seek help. It makes it really difficult. And whatever you do, please do not let these words come out of your mouth. Just stop. Please don't do that to someone who's struggling with this. Just stop it. That is the worst thing someone ever said to me. Caused me to really not get help for a very long time because of that. Know that there is hope. We have specialists in our clinics at Amen Clinics that specialize in eating disorders and addictions, and they're connected. That behavior is connected. And just be patient. So there is hope for it, but it is really important to get help for eating disorders because they are the deadliest mental health issue. So if you are struggling, please don't hesitate to DM me and I will give you some information on what you can do. And God bless all of you. Bye-bye.